Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we are doing another look with the Chanel Holiday Collection 2019. We're going to do something a bit more green. It's also going to be a get ready with me, talking about my trip to France. I have so much to talk to you guys about. I know a lot of you are curious, so that is today's video. But before we go any further, let's take a second to grab our iced coffee or our hot coffee. Let's take a sip and let's get started. So to start off with, I have a few eyeliners here. They're all Stylo Yeux. I have number 946 Intense Teal, number 938 Mare Chiaro, and number 857 Legendary Green. I really want to be able to pull more of the green in this eyeshadow palette right here. And the palette that I'm using is number 342 Lumière et Opulence. This is part of the holiday collection here. Now, as you can see, there is one dark khaki green color here, and I really want to bring out whatever green that I can. So I think I'll go with the second two eyeshadows. The first one is way too blue. I'm going to go ahead and start by using Legendary Green at first. I'm going to go ahead and layer it and then just keep playing with shadows. So for those of you who don't know, my husband and I recently went on vacation to France for 3 weeks, which was very exciting. A lot of you had asked me if I had been to France before, and I have in fact been to France multiple times. I actually lived in France for a year. After I graduated university, I went and taught English as a lecturer at a university in Normandy, in Rouen. And that's when I spent a year there, and it was amazing. I'm gonna use one of the sponges that came with the palette and just use some of that dark green color. So we spent a week and a half in Paris. And I have to say, I love Paris. It's such a wonderful city. You know, it's the city of lights, city of love, city of food. It's such a wonderful place. I really like it. I could definitely go back. I think the only disadvantage to Paris is how expensive it is, because it is crazy how expensive it is. Our itinerary was Paris, Rouen, and then Tours. And every time we moved, our living spaces kept getting cheaper and bigger, just to give you an idea. And also the food is expensive in Paris, but anyway. Okay, now using a clean blending brush, just blending out that dark color here. So our week and a half in Paris, we saw lots of things. We went to lots of museums. We did lots of walking tours as well. I don't know about you, but I love a walking tour. I find that nothing gets me more orientated around a city than doing a walking tour. Just going in with a separate brush, I'm just bringing up more of that green color here. So we did lots of walking tours. We were staying, when we were in Paris, we were staying in Montmartre, which is like a little bit out. It's in Paris, but it's not like in the center. It's not next to the Eiffel Tower. It's close to the Moulin Rouge. And I think parts of it can be kind of seedy, especially at night. But I don't know, in our neighborhood where we were staying, it felt very residential. It felt very much where French people were living. It didn't feel very touristy. None of the restaurants had menus in English, which is always a good sign. We did wonderful walking tours in Montmartre. We saw where the Impressionist painters, used to take their coffees, and it was very nice. It felt very much still bohemian in a way, but very expensive. And we also went and spent a day at the Louvre Museum, which I think is probably one of the biggest attractions in the world. I think Paris itself is the most visited city in the world, so that should give you an indication. Now, I am not an art history buff. I appreciate art and museums like the next person, but I have never in my life been around so many humans as I was at the Louvre. It's just, I am not claustrophobic, but I don't know, it is so intense when you go visit. And, we went in November or October, not during peak season. It was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and it was still so many humans. It's almost impossible to see anything because, first of all, I have never seen so many human beings walk around a museum on Skype or FaceTime showing their phone to like the walls with the paintings. I really don't understand that mentality, because when I do Skype or FaceTime, the quality is not any better than Google Images, you know? Like if you really want to see the Mona Lisa or the Venus de Milo and you can't physically be there, I don't think that like the FaceTime or Skype call is going to have much better quality than just Google Image. I'm just going back and forth between adding more dark color and then blending it out. And maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but I actually didn't like enjoy my time that much at the Louvre. There were literally so many people that if you got close to any statue or monument or painting you wanted to see, when you would turn around to get out, there'd be 50 people on top of you with their phones waiting to capture whatever it was that you saw. And I did see the Mona Lisa. I did see the Venus de Milo. The Venus de Milo is pretty cool because it's a sculpture, it's marble, but somehow it looks soft, so that was pretty impressive. And the Mona Lisa was cool, but I don't know. I think that Paris has many other museums that are worth seeing that don't require you giving up a part of your sanity to enjoy. Like at some point when we were in the Louvre, I really thought about just, you know, pulling an emergency fire alarm and just like running out any door, just like escaping out of the mess of people. And now I am just continuing to blend out this dark color here. But on a positive note, when we were in Paris, I also went shopping and bought this Chanel collection here. I went to Le Mare, which I think is probably the better Chanel beauty boutique. I also went to 31 Rue Cambon, you know, the iconic classic Chanel store. I took a photo in the stairs. It was wonderful. It was everything. I think if you are in Paris, go to 31 Rue Cambon for the stairs and take your photo. But if you want makeup and beauty, then go to Le Mare. I think it's better. And it's funny because when I was there, I was looking for, you know, anything that could be new or exclusive to Paris, etc., that would be different, and I couldn't really find anything. You know, the same items that we have here, they have there, basically. But apparently in the spring, there's going to be a new mascara that's going to be exclusive at the boutique in Le Mare. And I'm like, I was just there. Why wasn't it there when I was there? But anyway. We also went to the Versailles Museum, or Versailles Palace, I guess. It's technically outside of Paris. It's like maybe 45 minutes or an hour out. And you go by train, and it is opulent, decadent. It's so big. Like you walk up to it and it's like gold plated everything. You really understand why they had a revolution and why they chopped off everyone's head, because people were literally starving in the dirty streets of Paris, and the king and his entourage was surrounded in this gigantic palace of gold. I honestly I figured it would be big, but I don't even know if any of the photos I took really give it credit for how incredibly vast it is. And not even just the palace itself, but the grounds. It's like a small town almost. Like just how big the grounds are, the manicured gardens and the lake, and it's crazy. Especially because, you know, this was built as a retreat for the king and his entourage, especially for hunting. That's why there's so much forest around, and that's why there's so much nature, because it was basically just like a very glorified hunting lodge, which is just wild when you think of like the comparison with like either you were that wealthy or you were dying on the street. It's a lot. But anyway, I much preferred Versailles over the Louvre, even though technically Versailles is a bit more difficult to get to because it takes 45 minutes to get to. I honestly, if you were in Paris for like a few days, I would say go to Versailles over the Louvre, my opinion. But either way, when you are in Paris and you're going to a museum of any sort, you need to buy your tickets online ahead of time. So you can go on the website and just book like the day before or a few days before, because if you just show up, you're going to wait in line forever. I think this look is going to end up being rather dark. Oh well. I'm going to go ahead and mix the gold shadow, and then I'm just going to layer it. I'm going to do a bit of gold and then add a bit of green just to see what kind of color I can get. And of course, when we were in Paris, we went to see the Eiffel Tower. We saw it at night when it was all lit up. It is so beautiful. I don't know, guys. I just love Paris. I think it's so charming and enchanting, and just, it's such a wonderful city. It is also gigantic. It's quite overwhelming at times, especially if you accidentally take the metro at peak time. That is not so charming and enchanting, but it's still a wonderful city. I really love Paris. I think it's wonderful. Also, when we were in Paris, we ate a lot of food, obviously. I had so much escargot. It is so good. I mean, it's really just a snail covered in copious amounts of butter and garlic, which, what is there not to like about that? I also had something called coquille Saint-Jacques for the first time in my life. It's a scallop with, again, that same amount of butter and garlic, and just like, how would you not enjoy that? Normally, I don't really like shellfish, but this was good. I think to make it more green, I'm just gonna go ahead and use the lighter eyeliner here, Mare, Chiaro, and I'm gonna go ahead and tight line and maybe just put a little bit on the top lashes too. So I used Mare Chiaro and just did a thin line on top and on the bottom as well. And then I went over with this one here, Legendary Green, and just traced over top. And I think adding a light color first really just makes the green pop more, because Legendary Green is very dark. If you picked up one of the lighter green colors, either from the holiday collection or from the fall, I think there was, or I think with the new eyeshadow quads that came out, you know, there was a green one that I got, there was a blue, a gray, etc. I think there was a green there that had a little bit of sparkle. It was a bit lighter. I think that would also work with this look. I think I'm gonna go ahead and skip and do the face makeup and then finish up the eyes afterwards. I'm gonna go ahead and use my Armani Luminous Silk. I'm in the shade 5.5. So we also saw a lot of Impressionist paintings in Paris. We went to the Musée d'Orsay. I really like the Impressionists. I mean, I think it's from spending my time in Normandy, because that's where Monet has his gardens at Giverny, which is outside. It's basically between Normandy and Paris. And he also loved the cathedral in Rouen and did lots of tableaus on that, so we got to see them again, which was wonderful. The Musée d'Orsay was also quite crowded, but I mean, it's Paris, so you have no option. Everything is always busy. And after a week and a half in Paris, we decided to go to Normandy, so I could, you know, check out my old stomping grounds. It was very exciting because it was such a formative period of my life. You know, I went there right after university, so that like 22 to 24 age bracket, which is, it's so wild because I was almost like, I was gonna say 100 years ago, but it was more like 10. And I had made such great friends there, and I'm still in contact with all of them. And it was just so wild seeing us there, because I haven't seen most of them for about 8 or 10 years now. And, you know, in my mind, they're still 22, doing 22-year-old things. But as it turns out, we are all married with mortgages, expecting children now. And it's just so wild, because in my mind, it's this frozen period of my life. And then seeing them in person, I'm like, when did we get older? I guess we all did. You know, that's normal, that's life. It would actually be quite sad now if, you know, they weren't in the same stage, if there were still 22-year-olds going out and, you know, partying all the time, which we did back in the day. But, you know, now we're in our 30s, so, you know, we're getting established in our careers, we have mortgages, etc. It's just so wild. I'm using my concealer here. This is the Clé de Peau concealer in the shade called Almond. And it's just wild to think that, you know, so much has changed in those, you know, 10 years or so. And if I don't go back to Normandy again for another several years, what else will be different next time? But it was really nice because we stayed in Rouen, which is where I lived. I taught at a university in Mont-Saint-Aignan, which is just outside the city. And I got to go to several of the same restaurants that I went to when I was there. And it was just, it's so weird because I hadn't been there in so long. And some of the restaurants had the same menus, the same food, everything tasted the same, everything smelled the same. It was wonderful. I'm so happy that I went. I felt like I have finally arrived, you know? And when we were in Rouen, we went to the restaurant called La Couronne, which is the oldest bed and breakfast. I'm not sure if it's the oldest bed and breakfast in the world or in France. It was built in 1345 and it's now a restaurant. This is the restaurant that Julia Child went to eat and had an epiphany that she needed to study French cuisine. It's really cool. They have a lot of photos in the restaurant of different famous people who have eaten there, like Julia Child, Audrey Hepburn, the Queen of England. You know, and when I was living in France as a teaching assistant, I could not afford to eat there, but now I can. So it was really nice going there with my husband and just eating there. It was very fancy. I didn't really know what utensils to start with. I felt a little bit like a fish out of water, but they let us stay. For some reason, I thought that they had a Michelin star. They don't, but they are in the Michelin guide, which is good enough. Rouen is a really nice city. It's medieval, it's ancient, it is full of history. It's where Joan of Arc, unfortunately, met her fiery demise. You know, there's a lot of history there. The courthouse, the Palais de Justice, has these gigantic mortar holes from the siege in the Second World War. The cathedral is absolutely beautiful. One of the walls of the cathedral is missing their stained glass because they got bombed out. You know, there's a lot of history. If you like history, it's a wonderful place to go. The food is great. The people are wonderful. It's one of my favorite places in the world. So I'm really happy that I got to go back. And then after Rouen, we decided to go to Tours, to go to the Pays de la Loire, which is where they have all the big castles. But in order to go from Normandy to Tours, we had to go through Paris, which was kind of annoying. So we had to go back to Paris by train and then down to Tours. And when we were there, I'm going to go ahead and use a bit of bronzer. This is the Chanel Les Beiges number 50. When we were there, we stopped at a Marks and Spencer. I forgot how much I love Marks and Spencer. It's a British store. I think it's a department store, but they have lots of food, lots of prepared food, lots of snacks. I got so many snacks. I ate all of them already. They were wonderful. But it was just such a wonderful, happy memory. Oh my God, I totally forgot. When I was in Rouen, a month ago or so, I talked to you guys about going to Paris and France and Rouen and all that. And one of you guys reached out to me and told me that you lived in Rouen and asked me if I wanted to hang out. So I said yes. And I ended up going for lunch with Mare. We went to this wonderful tea house that had really fancy cakes and a really wonderful lunch, and she was so delightful. She was so nice, and we got to nerd out about makeup and also Lord of the Rings, which she's also a huge fan of, which was great. And she recommended going to a Tolkien exhibit in Paris, which we ended up going to later on. But anyway, I digress. Back to Tours. So this is like where it's called like the Loire region, or Le Pays de la Loire. That's where all these gigantic castles are. So yeah, I picked Tours as a home base, but not to knock Tours. The people there were wonderful. Everyone there was nice, but it just felt like such a small town. Like I thought Rouen was small, but Tours felt even smaller. Like a lot of the restaurants were closed on Sunday and Monday and sometimes Tuesday. I guess this is just very different from North America, where everything is open 24/7, 7 days a week. And one thing that was interesting is that when we were in Tours, I had to drive, and I've never driven in a foreign country before. I don't think the US counts because it's so close. But one thing they have in France and in Europe in general is they have a lot of roundabouts, which if you live in Canada or the US, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But they basically have them instead of traffic lights. So it's a big circle, and when you go up to it, you have to slow down and you have to make sure there's no one in the roundabout in your lane, and then you can go in because whoever's in the roundabout has the right of way. So in North America, we really do not have roundabouts. We just have traffic lights. We don't really have roundabouts. I don't know, in Canada, I've never really seen them. In the US, I haven't either. And some of these roundabouts are really big. Some of them are big enough to have like multiple lanes and are big enough to have traffic lights in the roundabout. And sometimes I found it confusing to know which exit to take on the roundabout. So there was one time we were driving and I missed my exit. So I decided to stay in the roundabout because I knew that if I stayed in the circle that I had the right of way. So I just stayed in the circle until Google Maps could figure out where we were. And all that was missing was some Benny Hill music to just like go along with the mood, because we were just like, we're so lost. Let's just stay inside the roundabout because they can't kick us out of here. Anyway, we eventually found our way home. As you can tell, I am safely back in Canada. So for the blush, I'm going to go into my Duo Tweed blush number 20, Tweed Coral. But it was nice in a way to be in the French countryside. And, you know, it's very different from Rouen and also from Paris as well. Tours is very relaxed. We got to drive along the French countryside and see lots of castles. We went to Chambord, which I think is one of the biggest ones. Chambord was built before Versailles, and Chambord was also built as a glorified hunting lodge. And I think it was Francis I who built it. He built a lot of castles, or I don't know if it was all him. Sometimes it was, you know, one of his ministers would have his own castle somewhere else. We also went to Chenonceau, and then we also went to Villandry. And Villandry has really beautiful gardens. And then after we had gone and seen all of the beautiful castles that looked like something out of Disney, we went back to Paris because we flew in and out of Paris. And so we decided to go a couple nights before just to, you know, settle in and not just have to travel like 14 hours that day. I'm gonna go ahead and use a bit of mascara. This is the Volume de Chanel in black. So when I met up with Marie in Rouen, she told us to go to a Tolkien exhibit. When we got back to Paris for a few nights, we decided to check it out, and it was wonderful. If you are a Tolkien fanatic, it is wonderful. They have a lot of first editions. They have a lot of his original notes and scribbles and drawings, and it is everything. I was very happy, and apparently we weren't allowed to take photos, but I snuck one photo of a first edition The Hobbit, which I was very happy to get. I'm going to go ahead and add some lipstick. This is the Lisa Eldridge New Velvet collection. This one is called Velvet Fawn. I did a whole video on the New Velvet collection. If you guys want to see some swatches and demos, there will be a link in the description box. So I reapplied the nail polish that I picked up with the collection here. This is 715 Deepness. It's a very, very, very dark green. And I feel like depending on the light, sometimes it looks black, but if you go in close, you see a bit of green. I don't know, I feel like when the nail polish is fresh, like the first few days, it looks more green. And then as time goes on, it goes more black. I don't know if that is possible, but anyway, this is the nail polish here. Okay guys, I think this about does it for the makeup tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed today's Get Ready With Me. I was trying to remember everything that I did and that happened when we were in France. There was so much that we did. We were there for 3 weeks, so I'm sure I missed some parts, but this was like the general overview and talking about some of the highlights. So I hope you guys enjoyed the Get Ready With Me. Hope you guys have a beautiful day. And let me know down in the comments which other looks you want to see. I'm sure there are other, maybe more like daytime or lighter looks that I could create with the palette. Feel free to let me know down in the comments. Okay guys, I hope you guys have a beautiful day. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.